What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Cody and Derek, here with you. Derek, new mic, looking good out over there. Yes, I am excited to jump in today, man, because we are going to look at all the Colts free agents. Obviously, free agency is coming up very rapidly approaching. So I thought that we could look at all the free agents and kind of divide them amongst four categories that we came up with based off of if we think we should re-sign them, level of importance for that. So our four categories are very important, important, not important, or let walk, right? So let the player walk. So we're going to kind of go into it. And since I'm OCD and since I'm weird, we're going to go alphabetically by last name. We're going to start with the first guy here, Matthew Adams. Now, Matthew Adams, a guy that's been with the Colts ever since he's been drafted, was a seventh-round pick in that vaunted 2018 draft. And he's been a good special teams and reserve guy for the Indianapolis Colts and really doesn't command a whole lot of money. Last year, he made $640,000. So what do you think, Derek, about where do you think he ranks here in your category?
I'm going to go with important. He's an important guy on the special teams. He's just that guy on the special teams in a lot of different ways. And I think he just adds that element to the special teams unit.
Okay. I'll probably be right there with you. I think he's important to bring back. He's just, he's nothing special, so I don't think he'd break the bank for him at all. But I think he's just a nice key guy there that's been in the locker room for a while. He's a good guy on special teams you talked about as well. So yeah, I'd bring him back for sure. I think I'd put him in the important category. All right, next guy, Moelly Cox. Now, he's a kind of a polarizing guy because he has some games where he looks really good, some games where he kind of disappears. But Derek, the Colts, obviously we know the need they have at tight end, especially with the uncertainty around Jack Doyle. So where does he fall in your category here?
For me, it's still in the important category. I know I've been saying that the Colts need to upgrade at the tight end position, but right now, overall, Moelly Cox is your best overall tight end at this moment. I think it's important that he sticks around to at least maintain that kind of structure in that tight end group right now.
So if you were choosing between Mo and Jack Doyle to keep around, who would you want to stay?
Definitely Moelly Cox.
Okay, that's what I thought. I'm right there with you. I think it's important to bring him back because he's a physically gifted guy. He's also an extremely good run blocker, so I'd bring him back undoubtedly. All right, the Colts kicker from last year, Michael Badgley. What are your thoughts on him?
It's not important for me because I know the Ballard always preaches competition in the kicking department. But again, you have a guy in Rodrigo Blankenship who is, for the most part, has been accurate throughout his early career. And if you wanted to go and get another kicker to get that competitiveness, you can go and do that without having to pay $1 million for a guy like Badgley. So I'm just picking the not important here.
Yeah, I'm kind of iffy on that too. Yeah, I'm kind of like, whatever. If you bring him back, cool. If not, it's not the end of the world. I'm right there with you. All right, another guy here, a guy that was really good in 2020, and obviously got injured a little bit in 2021, but and played a little bit of safety as well. TJ Carey, 31 and a half years old. What do you think on him?
I think for just the sake of the depth for this team at the moment, I'd say it's important. He's not going to break your bank. And unless the Colts have a design game plan to go and get one or two free agents in corner positions that, can play that hybrid role, I'm kind of thinking that they'll keep Carey around for at least one more season.
That's what I was going to say because he plays some safety, he plays some corner, he's got a little bit of that hybrid in him. So, I know he's a little bit older, but, you re-sign him for virtually nothing. I don't see the harm in that. He's a veteran guy. Especially, I know we're going to talk about Xavier Rhodes in a minute, but with his uncertainty up in the air right now, if you bring him back or not, I think TJ Carey would be a guy that would not command as much money and would be, a good guy that could step in a pinch if needed. So I agree with you. I would definitely put him in the important. All right, I think I know the next one, but we'll go anyway. Julian Davenport, who played a little bit of tackle for you, horrendous last year for you. I think I know what your answer is here, Derek, but let me hear it from your mouth.
I'm going to say not important. I know that some would say not let walk. Absolutely would possibly be a scenario. I'm going to save that for just a little bit later. But Davenport, just not good last year. Was barely serviceable at all throughout that. So we'll see if the Colts even consider giving him a second contract.
I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole, man. I'm letting walk 10 out of 10 times, 100% of the time. I'm letting walk. All right, Courtney Davis, a guy who's a little bit younger, Going to be 24 years old. He's, he got injured, so we didn't really get to see a whole lot about him. But what are your thoughts on him?
He's mainly been a practice squad guy for the majority of the time. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, just let walk here. I mean, Courtney Davis has not been any part of this team going forward. And I think that we can replace that part.
I'm just going to say not important. So I'm there with you. He's young, so I'm always intrigued in those younger guys to see if they can prove anything in the preseason and such. So, all right, Ashton Doolitt, my guy, Ashton Doolitt. Crazy, he's going to be only 25 years old here very soon, but he wasn't used very much last year. I felt like when needed, and when he was used, he always seemed to provide a spark in the game. What do you say, Derek, for Ashton Doolitt?
This is going to be my first very important. Very important because 25 years old, plays special teams, one of the best special teams guys in the league. And, this last year we saw in limited snaps on the offense, he was able to take advantage of those snaps. So I think it's a fair shot that for a guy you're not even paying $1 million to, I think it's important that we get Ashton Doolitt in there.
I mean, need I say more than just go back and look at my Twitter and look at all the times I said, this is another tweet reminding you Ashton Doolitt needs more snaps. He's clearly very important for me. No doubt. I want them to bring him back. I think he should be one of the top guys that you look to bring back. All right. Moving on to the next guy here, Jake Eldring camp. Been more of a practice squad guy. Hasn't made a lot of really wakes within this Colts offensive line room. He obviously got cut, so didn't really provide a whole lot. But what would you think on him?
Let walk. Like you said, mainly a practice squad guy. He's the least highest paid salary guy on your roster. So there's really not much of a point in keeping him around.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I would let him walk. He hasn't done anything really. He's 28 years old, so it's not like he's just like this young raw guy anymore. So really nothing there for me. But staying on the offensive line, Eric Fisher, who was your left tackle last year. Funny enough, we made a video, although this will come out before that video. We made a video talking about the different tiers of the different free agents, and we talked about Eric Fisher a little bit. So be on the lookout for that video. It's going to be coming out here in the next couple days. But Eric Fisher, he didn't have a great season last year, but we talked about it, Derek, especially with how saturated the tackle market is right now with just not really nothing out there, even in free agency and in the draft with where the Colts are. What do you think? What are your thoughts on Eric Fisher potentially bringing him back for one more year?
Well, I think for the exact reason that you just mentioned, I think that's important. Again, Eric Fisher did not have a great season, yes, but when you look at the market in the draft and in free agency, there's not a lot of options for you in the places that the Colts are at right now. And I think it actually is important that the Colts keep Eric Fisher around for at least one more year to see if they can get any kind of resurgence out of him.
Yeah, I'll go there with you. Yeah, I think it's important to bring him back just because you have no other guys. Maybe Matt Pryor, maybe. We'll see exactly what happens there. I think there will be a competition at left tackle, and obviously we'll see what happens there. But I think you bring back him for virtually nothing, and you just let him compete with some other guys. And then next year maybe is the year you go out and address left tackle, maybe in the draft or in free agency. Because, the market's pretty bare. The cupboard's pretty bare in terms of guys you could really go get that would be much of an upgrade. And if they were, you'd have to break the bank on them. So, as hard as it is, because, if there's another option, I would want to move on from Eric Fisher, no doubt. But I don't know if there is. Maybe an option does emerge. We'll see. Obviously, as free agency gets a little closer, maybe there is another option the Colts like to go with. But, trying to keep that offensive line intact, I think, is important. And Eric Fisher should be a guy that probably should be re-signed, as much as I don't really love to say that, just based off of how bare the cupboard is right now at tackle. All right, Zaire Franklin, another guy, special teams captain, man. What can you say about Zaire? He's just a guy that just all-around great player on special teams. Funny enough, him and Matthew Adams both were seventh-round picks in that 2018 draft, and the Colts have gotten good return on both those guys from a special teams standpoint. Zaire's obviously has a little bit more in terms of his skill set to actually be maybe a starting linebacker or a reserve linebacker, play some on the field. What are your thoughts on Zaire in terms of bringing him back?
This is an important one for me. He's a special teams captain. He's a guy that's been getting a few more snaps on the defense. I mean, again, his play may be very limited in how much you can use him, but in the moments that they do use him, he is a special guy. He is somebody that definitely commands respect in that locker room. And I think it's important to keep someone like him around.
I'm going to say very important because he's a core, the heart of your special teams, right? Like, I think you bring him back, you got to bring back your captain. That, in my opinion, I think you do. Now, for how much? I mean, that's a debate that we had before. We may have again, but I think for the sake of argument right now, I would say he's very important because he's one of your captains, especially. All right, let's move on now from Zaire to Mark Glowinski. Mark Glowinski, he's been your starting guard for the last couple years, and started off a little bit rough, and then I feel like he's kind of improved the last couple years. And I've really liked what I saw from him this last year, even with Chris Reed breathing down his neck at right guard. He earned the spot back, and I thought he played really well down the stretch for the Colts.
Yeah, this is a very important one for me. Mark Lewinsky, we mentioned it in the free agent video. Has played in every game over the past 3 years. He's your most available guy that you have on your offensive line that you've had all this time. I think it's important for the price tag that he is and the performance that you're getting from him and the availability that you get from him, that it's very important that you keep a guy like that on the line.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. T.Y. Hilton. This is going to be a good one. Man, we talked about in the video that we just made how we love Ty. We love what he's done, but I mean, the guy hasn't been available. He only played in 10 games this last year, right? Like, he missed
It
almost
doesn't
half the
even feel like
season.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of games where he was invisible, like they didn't throw the ball to him. So I don't know, man. Where do you stand on Ty right now? It's going to be a tough one either way. It's going to be a little bit emotional, but where do you stand on Ty?
This will probably trigger some Colts fans, but I'm going to say let walk.
Okay.
This is taking the emotion out of it. Paying a guy $8 million to have the games where you completely become a ghost, and whether it be your fault or not, is just not something that I want to have in a wide receiver. I would much prefer to just go with another guy that I could pay for an eighth of that amount of money and get one or two catches a game and see what we can do with it. I just don't think there's a situation where I want T.Y. Hilton to command that kind of money on this team for any further notice.
Yeah, I'll go not important, but I'll leave it open just because you never know. If the Colts elect really to decide to go in for a quarterback, say Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers. I know those are pipe dreams, but you never know in this league. So say the Colts do, they bring Ty back. I hope they still would upgrade at wide receiver somewhere. So in a scenario where Ty wouldn't even be the one or the two, where he would be the three or four, I could see that potentially being something where he gives it a go one more year, doesn't really like how last year turned out, and the Colts go for it and they bring him back for one more year, one more ride, right? That would be the only scenario I could really see him potentially coming back. But you're right. I mean, I think there's a lot of guys on the free agent market at wide receiver, and unless you're paying Ty only a couple million, I probably wouldn't bring him back. But in the event that he does take that hometown discount and does sign for a very cheap deal, I would be open to that. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep moving. Let's talk about Taekwon Lewis, the guy we have not talked about in a long time. Former second round pick in that 2018 draft as well. Started off really well. I mean, his rookie season, he obviously had that injury, but the games that he played really well in. He had multiple sack games. Everybody's like, oh my goodness, who is this Taekwon Lewis guy? And then all of a sudden, he had an issue where he wasn't seeing the field, right? He was a healthy scratch. And people were like, what in the world is going on with Taekwon Lewis? Well, then, he kind of was on his last leg for the 2020 season, and he emerged. And he played really well in 2020. He was playing really well also in 2021. Obviously had that horrible injury where he blew his knee out. He fumbled the football. It was just a terrible, terrible situation all the way around. And he's out for the year, and you're just like, shoot. But Taekwon, when he's healthy, and he hasn't really had a health problem up to this point, besides his rookie season, he's a solid player, I would say. He's a solid player that I feel like every year he improves as a player. Now, obviously, the injury is something, it's no joke, right? It's a serious injury. But for Taekwon Lewis, he's 27 years old. What would you do here, Derek? You only paid him a little over $1 million last season. Where do you rank him on level of importance to bring back?
I'm going to go with important. Taekwon Lewis was again, this season was off to a pretty decent start before, he blew his knee out in the Tennessee game. Taekwon Lewis, as you said, over the last few years has been reemerging as a key depth piece on this defensive line. And he's somebody that you can get for cheap. He's going to play well. He's position flexible. And that's something that the Colts desperately want and need. He's young. I think that it's important that we keep a guy like him around for another few years.
I love Taekwon Lewis. I say he's very important just for what you do. Because, Chris Ballard even said it at the end of his presser. He said, we missed Taekwon Lewis down the stretch. We missed him. When he went out, their defensive line, they changed, I feel like. There were some things that happened when Taekwon Lewis, that was a real significant loss for this defensive line. So I think he's really important. I think he's going to be one of the top priorities this offseason for sure. All right. Here's a guy we haven't talked about in a long time either. Marlon Mack, man. It's crazy. It's weird to think that he's still on this roster because we did not see him at all last year. And I think we're both probably in agreement. I don't know if we really need to go into much explanation. We're probably going to let him walk camp, right? Because you didn't use him last year at all. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, let walk. First off, the Colts have one of the best running back rooms in the NFL in absence of Marlon Mack. You don't need a Marlon Mack, even though he's been a great teammate and a great person for this organization. And, I will let him walk because I want him to go succeed somewhere else. I want him to succeed with another team because he deserves that chance. And that's the whole reason why I'm saying to let him walk.
Yeah. It's hard, though, because it was hard to see Marlon Mack not play last year. As good as Jonathan Taylor was, obviously with one of the best, if not the best, running backs in the league last year, to see Marlon Mack just not even be activated, it was so tough last year to see because we know how good of a player he is. But yeah, I want to go see him succeed somewhere else, preferably in the NFC, so I don't have to see him at all. But let's keep going here. Skye Moore. I feel like Skye Moore's been on this roster forever, and he's never really done a whole lot. Where do you stand on him?
I just say let walk because, in 2020 he didn't play because of the COVID year. I just don't know if there's really that much of an important value to him. I know he's mainly just a special teams guy, so I just don't think there's really an important need to keep him around.
I would say the same. Yeah. Probably let walk. It's just kind of like he doesn't do anything for this team. All right. Alchemy Muhammad, a guy that played a lot for the Colts last year, actually, surprisingly. And he led the team in terms of defensive ends and sacks last year. So where do you stand on Alchemy Muhammad?
I think Al-Qadim, it for me is, I'll be honest, I'm indifferent because I like Alchemy Muhammad. But I think that, when it comes to what the Colts may end up doing with the group, they got a bunch of different guys that are coming back. There's some other, I've already said I want Taekwon Lewis back. We're going to talk about another guy here shortly that I think that they may keep. I think it's kind of important that you keep him around, but then again, for the price tag that he may potentially get, I don't think it's important.
He's your leading sacker, but he only had 6.5 sacks. So how much is that saying?
Right.
Yeah. I would bring him back only a caveat that he's not your starter on your defensive end position, and maybe he does feel like he deserves a chance to go out and test the market and get an opportunity where he can actually be a starter at defensive end. Obviously with Gus Bradley and this new staff, I think there's going to have to be some decisions that maybe aren't as popular, but they're going to have to probably let a few of these defensive line guys go. And I think Alchemy Muhammad might be one of those guys that I could see them potentially let walk. So, yeah, I'm kind of like, I would be fine if you bring him back. I'd be fine if you let him walk because he's nothing special, but he's always a solid player for you.
Yes.
But I do feel like guys like Taekwon Lewis and the other guy we'll talk about here probably have a little bit higher ceilings at this point in their careers. All right. Nick Nelson, a guy, don't know a whole lot about him, was more of a practice squad guy from what I could tell. What do you think about him?
Let him walk. Like you said, mainly a practice squad guy, never really sees the field. I'm not too interested.
All right, George Odom.
George Odom for me is an important one. We saw last year was angry with the contract that he was getting because of being restricted. But nevertheless, he came out this year in the absence of Julian Blackmon and performed, in my opinion, very well. And, I think that may unfortunately be the reason we might not be able to keep him because he might be able to take this year and be like, hey, look at what I just did. And, some team might want to give him a few extra bucks to maybe go and play for him. So, but I do think it's important because George Odom is a very special teams player. And, he's a great depth piece at the safety group.
Yep, and especially when inevitably you have attrition at the safety position like you did when Blackman went down last year, George Odom was able to step in and play very well in a pinch when you needed him to. So, yeah, I would bring him back. I think he's important to bring back as well. Zach Pascal, what are your thoughts on Zach Pascal?
I'm going to say it's important that we bring Zach Pascal back. Again, I only say it's important because I don't think that it's the Colts should just look to get rid of him. I don't think that's the case. Again, Zach Pascal, very limited athletic wise and some of the things that he might be able to provide from a deep threat standpoint, certain things that he just can't do what other guys can, but he is the embodiment of what the Colts try to be offensively, which is physical domination. And that's what he is. And a wide receiver, if he was in any other body, he would absolutely dominate people. He does that, and that's what he does, and I love it. Again, I don't think that we should go paying big bucks for him, and I don't think that we will. I just think for the kind of person that he is and for kind of player that he embodies, I think it's important that we keep someone like that around in this locker room.
I think the word is solid for me for Pascal. He's willing to go in there, and he's an effort guy. He's willing to go on there and throw a block when needed, and that's what the Colts want to do. Pittman does it, Pascal does it really well. So I think you bring him back. I think it's important to bring him back. Knowing that he's probably not going to be one of your top receivers. Kind of similar in certain ways to Alchemy Muhammad in a way where he's solid, nothing special. But if you can bring him back, that'll be fine. That'll just be just fine with me. So, yeah, I would say for Pascal for sure. All right, Matt Pryor, one of the biggest surprises on this team when he got traded. I mean, nobody could have saw the season that Matt Pryor put in. I mean, everybody was thinking he was going to be terrible. It was going to be the second coming of Julian Davenport or whoever it is. Fill in the blank on the list of rotation and tackles of the Colts the last couple of years. But he actually wasn't. He played really well. He played a little bit at tackle, right tackle when Braden Smith was hurt. And then obviously when the Colts got hit with that COVID strike, he played right guard in a pinch for them. What do you think about him? A guy that's 27, so he's still fairly young. Was a nice depth piece for you last year. Do you bring him back?
I think this is a very important signing, and that's crazy to think about because everyone's like, who the hell is Matt Pryor? But then sure enough, he comes in. I think that PFF said from week 5 to week 9, Matt Pryor was our best offensive lineman. Best one out of everyone. That includes Quentin Nelson. So, Matt Pryor came in there and he performed very, very well on that right side. He was exactly the piece the Colts needed when Braden Smith spent half the season injured. I think that was a great, great signing. It was a hidden one that nobody expected to come out, but he did what he did. And now the Colts with another offensive line depth / left tackle situation, it is very important that you keep a guy like Matt Pryor around who exceeded all expectations.
You read my mind because you're going to need to have an answer at left tackle, whether it is Fisher, whether it is Pryor, whether it is somebody else. You're going to need him to go compete for that spot, I think. So I think bringing him back is essential, honestly. I think it is very important to bring him back because, we can talk all the time about how great the Colts' depth is at guard. Tackle, not so much the last couple of years. It's been honestly atrocious at tackle the last couple of years. So bringing back a guy like Matt Pryor is huge and so important. All right, talk about another guy who was a big surprise. Chris Reed was a big surprise for this Colts team last year. He played so well that he actually started stealing some snaps away from right guard Mark Lewinsky last year. What do you think about bringing Chris Reed back?
I think this is very important. When you have a guy that when you're all pro, best offensive lineman in football, Quentin Nelson goes down, and then you have a guy in the wake and you say, man, he's certainly not Quentin Nelson, but it certainly doesn't feel like we're dropping off much in performance at that spot. You need to bring a guy like that back. That is so important to keep around. He's not going to ask for big bank bucks. It doesn't seem like he will. I think that's very important.
Yep. Agreed with you there. Xavier Rhodes, one that we talked about also in our video we did just a little bit ago. What are your thoughts on him? Where do you rank him? I would say not important, but where would you rank him?
I'm going to go with the same. I'm going to go not important because like I said, there's other guys in the cornerback market that I think that the Colts can go and get for around the same price, if not a little lower, and some guys who are potentially younger as well, that are going to be veterans as well. I just think that the better days of Xavier Rhodes are behind him at this point, and I just think the Colts could afford to move on.
Yep. All right, Isaac Rochelle, who's brought in last offseason.
I'm going to go not important. That's one of the few guys on this list that I haven't said that was important. Isaac Rochelle, I love the time that he did step in, but, Isaac Rochelle got burnt a couple times on the outside. He's not as great at stopping the run as some of these other guys are, and he doesn't specialize in making plays in the passing game. So I'll just say not important.
I'll just let walk there. Nothing special there. Our Andrew Sendejo stepped in at safety last year when Blackman went down.
I'm going to say let walk. I think that you could get another safety at the $1 million mark that's not 35 years old that I think can actually play that position a little better.
Yep. Taylor Stallworth, another guy that was a surprise last year.
I'm going to go important here. I'm going to definitely go important. And Taylor Stallworth, like Matt Pryor, was one of the more surprising and improved players on this roster. Went from a mainly run-stopping defensive tackle that we knew from the year prior to being, oh, wow, he's actually got somewhat of a pass rush now. So, he had 4 sacks this last year, which, that was impressive. It was a great thing to see out of Taylor Stallworth. So you certainly hope you can get him for cheap again. But he might ask for a few more dollars because of what this last year gave him. But I think Stallworth is a great depth piece for you at D tackle.
He's huge. Yeah, he's a huge depth piece. I would go important as well. All right. Sam Tevi, your favorite player.
I'm letting walk. Just like what you said with Davenport, I'm not touching him with a 30-foot pole. I'm just saying, I'm not. The man got destroyed by third stringers
by Ben Banagoo, if that tells you anything.
I'm not taking a chance on that at all.
Fair enough.
All right. They would be better off. I'm kidding when I say this. The Colts would be better off is paying me $1 million to go out there and I can block almost as well as Sam Tevi did.
All right. Kimoco Turi will be the last one that I think will, of note, I guess. Yeah. So where do you stand on Toure? He's he's an interesting one. Where do you stand on him?
I'm actually going to go very important here. I was very critical of Kimoco Toure from this season. I thought it was because I was ill-informed. I was ill-informed of what Kimoco Toure was and what he was doing. And I come to find out it was a lot more on the coaching staff that was the problem than what it really was with Kimoco Toure. After talking with guys like Lawrence Owen, with talking with guys like Zach Hicks, I was able to learn and understand more about what Kimoco Toure's situation. And I think only having played 20% of the snaps last season, Kimoco Toure was second most in defensive end sacks last season with us and only played 20% of the snaps. We can get double that. Kimoco Toure could potentially be our sack leader for these next few years if we get him more than double those snaps that he had the previous year. And I think with Gus Bradley's system, I think it's going to serve him better. So I think it's a very important thing that you get a guy like Kimoco Toure who's still young, who still has potential to see if he can break that mold one more time.
I'll go important there. Yeah. For all the reasons you said, I'll go important. All right. Rob Windsor.
Let walk.
Okay. And then finally,
because when he was drafted, I kind of was saying, oh, he was going to be the guy that I thought might sneak onto the roster. It just sucks.
I remember that
it happened.
Yep. I remember that. Antwaun Woods.
Not important. Was mainly just a guy that, came on every now and again, but he was more of the depth piece that I just think is replaceable.
Yeah. And you already hopefully bring back Taylor Stallworth, so you don't really need him. All right. That'll do it, guys, for our look. There's a lot of guys. I think you said 29 guys that we just looked at. We were going to originally rank them all, but we're just like, that's a lot of guys to rank. So
yeah,
we just decided, we'll just go do this list. It'll make things go a little bit quicker. But hey, we're still, about half an hour in. So we could have gone for maybe an hour if we would have tried to do that. So kind of glad we decided to go this direction. But All right, guys, let us know in the comments what you think about each of these players. Do you agree with Derek and myself? Do you think certain players are more important, less important? Let us know in the comments below. That'll do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for all your support. If you haven't yet, you're still watching this video, you haven't hit subscribe, hit like yet, be sure to do that. It helps push our content out to other people. Thank you guys so much for all your support. And as always, go Colts.